I want to invite everyone who's standing to please come and take a seat. I want to thank you all again for your participation and your input. And want to thank all of our leaders of the breakout groups, both that are on the stage and that are not. So just let's give them a round of applause. I want to thank Abcejo for all of his help, behind the scenes and with everything. And let's give him a round of applause as well. And so we have 5 breakout sessions, but 6 presentations. Lynn was kind enough to also do that on Zoom, and we need Lynn up here as well. So we'll have to ask Lynn to come up. And then, so we'll go and get started. So we'll do asking each presenter 5 minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes at the end for questions. We have to be out by 10 till, so just keep that in mind. So thank you all. And I know, sorry. And then we'll, of course, these recommendations will get, reviewed over the next few weeks, and then there will be a publication with this in the future. So please, be on the lookout for that and let your colleagues and friends know as well. Let's go and get started. So the first, we have the breakout session number 1, preventing opioid-related harm, to Dr. Toby Weingarten.
Thank you. So in our group, we first off wanted to focus on what exactly is opioid harm. And we dichotomize this into maybe the acute perioperative setting or the immediate discharge home, early ambulatory surgery period. And then also recognizing that opioid harm has to be defined beyond this time with people developing chemical dependency problems with opioids. So there's really a dichotomy of different periods of harm that can occur temporarily associated with the surgical encounter. Be that as it may, I think our recommendations will probably address both of these broadly. So the first recommendation is to realize that opioid stewardship is more than just the anesthesiologist's purview, and that we need to do collaboration with interdisciplinary manner, as well as all the stakeholders involved. So one idea was to talk to the American College of Surgeons, maybe the hospitalist societies. Also, we need to engage nursing leadership. But importantly, we also need to talk to maybe regulators, JCO, CMS, pharmacy, payers, the insurance companies that insure the hospitals, as well as the leadership of the different health networks. The second recommendation is patient education, and this should ideally begin in the surgeon's office. The patients need to understand that opioid medications have a real potential for harm, and that the emphasis should be on non-opioid solutions for pain, including acetaminophen and NSAIDs if they're appropriate, other ways of managing pain other than pharmaceuticals as well. Lastly, or third, is if somebody is being discharged from the hospital on opioids, we feel that in the modern era, there's no excuse for them not being on pulse oximeter. These are inexpensive devices. After COVID, the population became very familiar with this technology, so it's not a foreign technology for people. And if you are being sent home with an opioid, I do not understand why you're not being sent home with naloxone. It should be with naloxone spray. And I think that would also send an educational message to the family that this is a very dangerous medication. You need to be very careful with it. And it is also, when we're sending people home with these drugs, why are we not sending them home with acetaminophen and an NSAID? Use these first. No excuse if you don't have them at home. Here's a few. They're pennies on the dollar. The last recommendation is, how do we, as a specialty, reduce the amount of opioids that we use in the operating room? And some of these might be aspirational, as we're waiting for our pharmaceutical colleagues to develop novel analgesics, which have better safety profile vis-a-vis respiratory depression and other opioid-related side effects. Earlier in the meeting, we discussed using ready-made injections with smaller doses of opioids. And what can we do also with adjuncts that are not sedating to give to patients as well during procedures. We hope with these recommendations that these are common sense recommendations that are something that we can approach our hospital leadership with and hopefully make it improve the outcomes of opioid safety. Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Methangkool with the reduced drug administration breakout session.
Hello, everyone. So our group initially started talking about a lot of discrete issues with drug administrations, but quickly realized that we would not be able to solve all of the problems within drug administration errors within 1 hour. So we decided that we would propose creating recommendations based on the type of drug administration problem, whether it's a substitution error, timing error, patient error, that kind of thing. We would base those recommendations on ISMP guidance, but really tailor to anesthetic specific concerns. The ISMP guidance is very broad. A lot of the anesthesia specific issues may get lost or not paid attention to. So that's what we wanted to focus on. And then we also discussed the fact that large academic medical centers don't necessarily, or large academic medical centers may have resources that other places like community hospitals, rural centers may not necessarily have. So we also wanted to tailor recommendations based on institutional resources. Another recommendation that we had was that when we are proposing technological solutions for drug or medication safety, we often run into problems with administration or pushback saying that there is not enough funds, not enough resources. So we wanted to create roadmaps to make the case for change and implementation that we could present to hospital or administration, basically that could be distributed amongst the different institutions that would want to make the case to their own administration. We wanted to propose working in a multidisciplinary fashion with pharmacy, industry, nurses, all anesthesia professionals, along with societies including ISMP, ASA, and ASHP. These are organizations that may have a little bit more gravitas or clout, that may have pull with CMS to actually make change. And there was also a discussion about presenting these issues at pharmacy conferences, given that many pharmacists or pharmaceutical or pharmacy organizations may not be aware of the issues that we are facing in the OR. And finally, the last recommendation would be to convene a work group to work out all of these specific recommendations going forward.
Next, we have Tricia Meyer. And sorry, I got from Ms. Williams.
Hello, we were work group 3 and we were on standardization. So one of the first recommendations was to create a national survey to understand the gaps. So prior to this conference, we sent out a pre-conference survey and we asked, what do you feel of the safety initiatives would give you the greatest impact on medication safety in the OR? And our respondents said 79% said if we could have pre-filled syringes, that would have the biggest impact. 75% said if we could standardize concentration. 60% said if we could just have ready-to-use infusion bags in the OR. So these are the same things we've been talking about since 2010, back again in 2018. So we ask our group to focus on a call to action. What can we do to make this more actionable? Not just say, we recommend you should have syringes, ready-to-use bags. One of the things that we felt this survey was so informative, if we could do and collaborate with ASA to do a national survey of anesthesia chairs, possibly even pharmacy directors, key stakeholders of sort of the same information. What have you implemented pre-filled syringes? If so, what are they? What concentration? Or why have you not? What are your barriers? So we could take that information and work with it and develop a toolkit to use to help people come up with strategies on how to implement, how to do a budget for the pre-filled syringes, how to convince your administrator to allow you the budget for that. We also looked at different thoughts on, could we take this information, which would be pretty compelling, to organizations like Leapfrog, and who are very concerned about their employees' safety, that look how many people or institutions have not implemented these goals. Look how many implementation barriers are occurring. And perhaps you can work with us to come up with how you can put this into your recommendations and regulations. We felt Leapfrog might be more willing to do that. Also, one of the members of our group mentioned that CMS is developing in 2 years a safety initiative, and I'm not for sure Aaron's left, but one of the speakers talked about it. Thank you. Yeah, maybe it was you yesterday. And if we could show them the data from the survey, because there's an assumption that there's been a slow uptick in these medication safety strategies in ORs across the country. And if we could also take it and CMS sort of build it into this new initiative that they're doing would be very helpful. And we felt that was where the teeth would come from. So Aubrey's going to talk about recommendation number 2.
Oh, I think you went through all of them actually. But no, I think that one thing that we really were struck by was in our pre-survey data, and this is a group of very safety-minded folks, there was absolutely no best practice or recognized best practice in standardization that was taken up by a majority of institutions fully. And so we felt like, given the significant heterogeneity and the suspected like very low floor of some of these implementations, that really targeting at an institutional level, helping those hospitals get some of these things up and running was going to be super valuable. And so our second recommendation is really around that institutional level implementation guidance, getting the data that they need in one place, giving them sort of this the literature around best practices, and then giving them concrete guidance for how to analyze their barriers, how to overcome their barriers. And so that would be a very concrete toolkit that we could make.
Yeah, and one other point, we had a member from pharma in our group, and she felt if it would be ideal for a pharmaceutical company to have information from customers saying what they needed, how they wanted it, in what form they wanted it, that would help guide the pharma company into how they design their products or what products they would launch. So those were our recommendations. Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Nanji, who will talk about implementing technology and innovation in room, and then we'll have. Oh, sorry.
This is the Zoom.
Oh, sorry. Wait.
So yeah, if Lynn is here for Zoom.
Okay, we'll do. Okay,
Yeah, right.
okay. Lynn. No, the slide's right here.
There's her, and then for the next 2.
I gotta open up the. Okay.
Open up and drop.
There we go.
Thank you.
Well, from the APSF Zoom family, here we are. And thank you all who participated online. So I hope I do justice to what we created here. We could not separate out our recommendations because as we thought about implementing technology and innovation, it is a Venn diagram, if you will. So looking at culture seemed to be our major focus. And this could translate across any kind of implementation, not just technology and innovation, but the safety culture, the innovation culture, learning culture, and implementation culture. So when we thought about safety, we were really focused on several things, data being at the beginning, and not just the qualitative or quantitative data, but what qualitative data is available to us in stories. Stories seem to be a thread that went through all of these different culture pieces that we discussed. And so looking at our personal local data, if you're working in a system, how do you limit variability, look at your data and improve practice for safety in those settings related to technology. And then also global, that we could look regionally, nationally, and absolutely around the world. What's the magnitude of the issues that are being faced related to technology implementation or innovation? And communicate positive, negative, near miss, and improvement as stories. So just to understand what other people have experienced so that you don't have that same experience, we felt was very important to improving your own practice. You always want to be smarter the next day. So what can I learn from other people's experiences? Improvement considerations, and then multimodal event reporting. This also shows up again in the learning culture because we have learners across generations. We have people even in the same generation who have different preferences for how they learn and process information that makes it meaningful for them. In the innovation culture, then an inclusive team design and improvement, that it's not just a few of the providers, but we are represented by people who have the same workflow. I remember implementing the electronic health record, and what works for a physician doesn't work for an advanced practice professional. So CRNAs and the anesthesiologists had a little different workflow in the electronic medical record related to the medications. Then strategic framework for all implementation, that there is something that the people that are receiving this request to implement, to innovate, to use this technology, it's always set up the same way, whether you think Plan, Do, Study, Act, however you think in a cycle, that it isn't just shotgun, that this is how we do business, and I'm waiting for that to occur so I can move on to the next phase. Though they're iterative, some sort of format is helpful. That it is evidence-based, looking both at the gray literature and the peer-reviewed literature, because as we know, technology that's coming at us sometimes is so quick that it's not in the peer-reviewed evidence that you can look at it. Then user-centered design, what works on one unit may not work in the OR anesthetizing location. One of our participants shared that they barcoding was in the whole hospital, but the OR hadn't adopted it yet because there was a lot of resistance. So how do we make that attractive for our colleagues? In the learning culture, again, that multimodal, the story that came out here was some folks like the laminated page in the operating room, some like a QR code to look at more information, and some like a video. So again, oh, forget it. I'll move on. Okay, continuous and virus scan. So what's happening in our environment? Is it working? You know, you can't just put a piece of technology in place. You may need to bring back the manufacturer. You may need their engineers to come in. You may need to have a conversation because there's opportunity to improve, right, JW? There's always opportunity to improve. We never quit designing for the human experience and safety. Then real-time support. This was really important from the group, the stories that came out, that when you need something, it needs to be judgment-free and you need help now. Bring it. And then continued improvement research agenda. We have opportunity to continue as the APSF or inside our organizations or in collaboration across organizations to look at how we implement technology, how we innovate so that we can continue to improve safely. And last but not least, that implementation culture. What is current practice and opinion? Because we know there's the resistance, and I can see I'm going to get the hook here, so I'll finish. What is the current workflow, and what is it that we can look at in swim lanes or however you prefer to do that to limit variability? And last but not least, how can we limit those workarounds? And again, making sure the barcode availability is happening so that you can follow the process if you're working in that piece of technology for medication safety. Thank you all, and thank you, Zoomers.
Thank you so much for leading that Zoom session. Really appreciate it. Next, well, just give me a moment while I bring this one up. Okay. Dr. Nanji, thank you.
Our group had a lot of lively discussion. We came up with actually 5 recommendations. The first is that hospitals should implement patient-specific point-of-care clinical decision support for medication safety checks facilitated by machine-readable code prior to medication administration to reduce patient-related harm, including medication errors. And I think this is a topic that came up many times during the talks yesterday too. The second was that APSF should boldly advocate for EHR companies to work with industry, in particular, those those who are creating safety tools like infusion device companies, clinical decision support companies, to advocate for the EHR companies to provide standardized access to bidirectional interfaces that allow these technologies to work seamlessly, interoperable, and improving patient safety. And we talked about measuring a reduction in patient harm versus medication errors, and which may be easier or better to measure. I don't know if we landed on a final answer there, but we said here reducing patient harm, including medication errors. The third was that every patient receiving opioids should be continuously monitored and have a standardized response system in place. So not just monitored, but the data are going somewhere, and there's a standardized response to any abnormalities in the data coming in. And this monitoring should happen both in hospital and after discharge while they're on opioids. And then the fourth was augmented intelligence should be integrated by industry and supported by the hospital C-suite and embraced by providers in order to streamline anesthesia workflows and reduce patient-related harm, including medication errors. And a lot of the talk around this topic of augmented intelligence was around narcotic diversion tools. We want those things to kind of happen automatically in the background and not involve so many extra steps for the clinician. And we thought that there was an opportunity here for augmented intelligence to facilitate that. And then finally, leveraging technology and interoperability to create a national error reporting system that uses machine learning to identify actionable trends to reduce patient-related harm. So we talked about multiple error reporting systems that are currently in place, including the ISMP, the AQI's errors system, the FDA has their own. And can we get all of these together so that we have that volume and we can do some real things with those data? Thank you.
Oh, you're good. I'll be.
Oh, I can read it.
Oh, yeah, you can read it.
So
You got it.
Good morning, everyone. I know everyone's getting ready to depart, but this is the final group. I want to thank Steve and also Javon for helping me with this presentation, along with a very diverse group. This is very close to me because I was the peer assistant for Minnesota Association of Nurse Anesthetists for 15 years. So wellness is close to home for me. So I appreciate this presentation. We had a very, very diverse group, including an attorney in our group. So we had a good discussion, and some of our recommendations, we realized that a lot of them are very, very expensive. And so small settings, budget is a huge cost, a huge factor. So we also came up with low hanging fruits that maybe low budget, but high impact for many facilities. So some of our recommendations include technology integration. You've seen many of these presented yesterday, including the barcode scanning, RF ID and CD clinical decision support system that we want to emphasize the need for this across the country or across the nation for those that can afford or have the budget for it. Standardize, involve end users in systems designed to address potential workflow challenges. Standardization and say another one is that standardization and safety to develop recommendation for the concentration for those facilities that are in a small setting that can't afford the barcode system. We want to, one of our group recommended to have those high concentrated vials like vasopressin, naloxone to be in a centralized area so that it's not easily accessible and to promote safety. We also collaboration and training. We want to engage peri-op teams and industry partners to also, if provide education, perhaps. One of the members recommended maybe groups or organizations can come and help with the education piece for that. Wellness is very, very, like I said, very close to home for me. So we want to align accountability with workflow and training, standardize reporting, and incentivize staff to report near misses. What we find challenging at some facilities is that self-reporting is lower than we think, because facilities can be treated as individuals can be treated punitively for self-reporting, and then some people end up in the library during investigation. And so we want to ensure that the self-reporting is encouraged, and promote wellness as well. We want to create an internal wellness support system, and we also want it to be a peer-to-peer versus leadership. We wanted to have a collaborative opportunity to support your own peers rather than a leadership, so that way there's the same support system. And we want to streamline and simplify safety reporting, like when you're for example, one shared that when you're sending an IT report, you can track the system. So we want that as a smooth process as possible when you're also reporting. Empower staff to stop the line during timeouts or consent issues. Residents and SRNAs, they should have the ability to say, you know, I'm not comfortable with this. The consent is wrong. They should be able to stop the line as well. Because oftentimes the SRNAs or residents, they just listen to attending or their preceptors. So we want to empower our learners as well. Finally, criminalization. We want to generate, we are recommending for APSF to perhaps create templates for toolkits to provide different facilities or organizations regarding communication of events, how to communicate to patients or clients regarding safety sentinel events as toolkits for our membership. And finally, APSF to develop templates that can be shared across the system, like I said, for sentinel events. Thank you.
So in our last few minutes, we have about 5 minutes together. We can open the floor for questions.
This is not so much a question as it is another comment that came up in our group. Our hospitals always say they can't afford it. They buy robots. They may not say, I can't afford it. They may only say, I give a higher priority to a different project.
Yeah.
They have the money.
So it struck me that something that I don't think's come up, at least openly in this meeting, that we as APSF should consider is to promote the innovation by whoever of reliable, low-cost, continuous measurement of intravenous agents. Because if you can measure how much opioid or propofol is in that patient's blood, that's going to be a far better feedback mechanism for what we're trying to accomplish in safety as well as efficacy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron.
Mine is less of a question and more of a comment and a thank you to this entire group. Having been in this industry for 30 years, I've been to a large number of conferences. This is my first at this conference. What an amazing group of people. I mean that with every degree of sincerity. Your feedback, your commentary, the conversations are invaluable. Though I sit on the vendor side of this community, you made me feel a part of yours. So there was an amazing amount of education in an event that I thought was incredibly well run. And I'm just humbled and thankful to be around this amazing group of highly educated, highly skilled individuals. And my hope is that you'll invite us back next year too. So many thanks.
Thank you for your comment. I think that's just a great way to end this meeting, and then also at this last slide. When we think about 40 years ago, what happened here in Boston, it would not have happened without our corporate sponsors. And so the top part of the slide actually are the corporate sponsors that supported the meeting 40 years ago that led to the creation of APSF. So we should first thank them. And then our current sponsors, I want to really give, heartfelt thanks. It's been so great to meet so many of you in person and have great conversations. And, we welcome you all to attend the APSF Stoelting Conference in the future. That's anyone here. And, we have a lot of work to do. I like to commonly say there's more work than people. So if there is a breakout group or an area you're interested in, please reach out. We would love to have more involvement. So thank you all. Safe travels back home. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.